going to go through those, but I thought I'd give Craig Thompson just a minute here to talk about how we got here, since he was the one that kind of fomented development and of this webinar. Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Deb. So just very briefly, because I do not want to lose the connection to Rob, for the last 2.5 years, there has been an informal Gran Chaco working group, which arose spontaneously, again, about 2.5 years ago. And we have been meeting periodically to try to understand how to accelerate conservation delivery in the Chaco, primarily out of concern for neotropical migratory birds, but as Rob has also indicated, there are a host of species, a host of resident species, some endemic or near endemic, that would also benefit from accelerated and expanded conservation efforts. It's proven to be very challenging. By the way, that working group is comprised of all kinds of a number of representatives from a variety of agencies and organizations across the Western Hemisphere. So everyone who has participated, many of whom are on this call, has just been terrific, and their participation is much appreciated. Needless to say, it's been very challenging to try to get conservation up and running for a lot of reasons, many of which Rob also identified. However, it seems like now we're on the cusp of building momentum. BirdLife International, particularly their Americas program, has been very helpful in terms of moving things forward, as has American Bird Conservancy and other organizations, particularly those conservation organizations in Argentina and Paraguay, to a lesser extent in Bolivia, but we do hope to strengthen connections there. So with that, suffice to say, the challenges are great, but we still have the opportunity to make a difference, and we hope to do so. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob. Thanks, Deb.
Yep. Yeah, so you can either write a question in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. And if we don't have any, I'll go through the questions that we received during when people were registering, and we can talk about those. And Rob, if you're able, you can answer some of those. So I'm not seeing any hands at the moment, so I might ask one of the questions, and I know we have a bit of an answer here, and Rob can add to it if you'd like, but it said, curious if anyone has started to explore Connecticut warbler habitat / populations within the Gran Chaco. We are seeing steep declines on the breeding grounds. And I know Wisconsin DNR worked with Callie Stanley to add Connecticut warbler surveys to her proposed yellow-billed cuckoo work in Bolivia. And but it doesn't appear that that initiative will materialize, but there is definitely a need there. I don't know, Rob, if you have any additional information on Connecticut warbler, but I feel like that's not one I've heard about myself.
Yeah, hopefully people can hear me. My apologies that I'm only just connecting, and connection is probably not great. I'm in the Chaco at the moment, and it's about to rain, which is actually really exciting. Hasn't happened for a long time. Should be really good for the cuckoos afterwards. So on the Connecticut warbler front, no, there really hasn't been a kind of concerted, systematic effort, I would say. The main sort of area that some of the geolocator data suggested was important is one of the areas that has really suffered from fires this year. Particularly on the Paraguayan side, but also on the Bolivian side. So I would say it's only getting more and more important to get some concerted effort into surveying in that habitat, which is sort of a transitional Chaco Cerrado. It's more sort of Chiquitanía, what it's called in Bolivia, forest type. Likely also very important for the cuckoos when they sort of first come into the Paraguayan Chaco. So.
Excellent, thanks. Mark had a question in the chat. He said, a lot of eBird squares with no data. Are there no birders in the area, or is it a private land / access issue? Any thoughts?
It's there aren't many birders. There are a lot more now, and a lot of them use eBird, but it's primarily an access issue. Most of the Chaco is privately owned. There are just a few protected areas and a few sort of municipal, if you like, areas that have access. There's actually one, I'm actually in one right now, one of the Mennonite colonies, and there's sort of their reserve. But yeah, it's primarily access to land.
Okay, thank you. There was one kind of general question about what are the equitable models of land conservation in which North American partners might engage? Like, are there, certain groups or ways that you think it's the best for North American partners to support conservation work?
Yeah, I mean, such is the rate of deforestation, there's certainly the need for strategic land purchase. Yeah, to secure particularly some of the core habitat to maintain forested corridors between some of the larger protected areas. But at the same time, there is, I would love to be proved wrong, but there is not going to be enough money materializing in the short term to secure enough land through over reserve mechanisms. So also, working very closely with landowners. By law, they have to leave a certain amount as a forest reserve. So working with the individual landowners and with the associations of landowners to ensure that as these reserves are being established, that's being developed from a landscape perspective to ensure that corridors are being maintained. And then, anything that can be done to help incentivize the landowners to do that, and particularly to go beyond that forested minimum to leave larger areas of forest than is required by law. So, thinking about some of the innovative finance mechanisms, carbon storage, ecosystem service payments, those kind of things. So it's really that combination of strategic land purchase and working very closely with landowners. And so just to add a third, the protected area system throughout the Gran Chaco is very significantly under-resourced. So any sort of potential government to government collaboration around training of park guards and just increasing the capacity of park guards could go a very long way, could really make a significant difference. Some of the largest protected area in Paraguay is about 720,000 hectares, and I think there are currently 4 park guards and maybe 1 motorbike to sort of manage that whole area.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Guy that kind of builds on that. Are there any government initiatives or programs that might counter the land use conversion, like a debt swap potential or anything like that?
There was a debt for nature swap in Paraguay, which set up a fund that's primarily been focused on managing protected areas in eastern Paraguay. I'm actually not sure whether there is some kind of barrier there to supporting work in the Chaco. But it's what there are a couple of larger programs through some of the larger organizations, WWF, WCS, working closely with landowners, looking at more sustainable, primarily ranching techniques. That's primarily through the Jaguar lens. It's trying to make ranching more Jaguar friendly, but at least it's an important window in, and it's a question of then building on that to bring in other elements of biodiversity.
Okay. I think we have time. I can squeeze in one final question that folks had. What's the probability of improving the Modus Tower network in the Gran Chaco?
Yeah, so actually pretty good. The Ministry of Public Works in Paraguay has sort of included Motus as part of its sort of environmental mitigation for any major developments. And at the moment, there's a lot of paving of roads, and so there are a lot of opportunities to install in towers. There are probably plans at the moment for another, I would think, 8 to 10 towers. Of course, we're talking a vast area, and the challenge is actually trying to get those towers located in a strategic place, which has to provide useful information rather than sort of randomly along highways where just the likelihood of useful data is low. But it's a very interesting opportunity. One of the biggest challenges, I mean, it's been wonderful for me because it's been an opportunity for me to get back out in the field and do a lot more bird banding, but it's just the very few people in country who have been trained to catch birds, to band birds, to put nanotags on them. So, and then just the practicalities of getting towers and getting nanotags to Paraguay, even when there is funding available to make that happen. So it's just some of those very basic challenges which are stopping the network from being expanded as much as it really could be in the short term.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob.